Time to get going, I think. Oh, got my beer. Let's get chat open on my phone because it's the only way I can. Excuse me. It's the only way I can fricking read it. All right. So, what the hell am I looking at here? God, I really feel my age when I navigate around Twitch sometimes. No. Just to me, please. Okay. So I haven't been streaming for a few days because I broke my microphone stand and I could not get a satisfactory replacement, by which I mean using a mixture of sellotape and glue. I couldn't get my mic stand to work properly. I was really angry with myself because I broke it exactly how I thought I might end up breaking it, which was exactly where the clamp joins to the base of the microphone. It's just not very good. Wasn't very strong, so I splurged. I also got myself an input thing, the Scarlett i2i, which seems to have given quite a bump in sound. Let's see. Okay, so this is Britannic Patroness of the Mediterranean, which I think is a bit of a yucky title for what is actually a really lovely game by the same team that brought us the Titanic Honor and Glory demo, which I streamed a week or so back. There were 3 ships in the Olympic class, of which the Titanic was arguably the most famous. And that was the middle sister. And the first one was Olympic, which went on to have a long career into the 30s. And the last sister was the Britannic, which, in common with the Titanic, never actually crossed the Atlantic. She was being built when the Titanic disaster happened, and lots of improvements from both safety and cosmetic were incorporated into her build. But she never saw service in her ocean liner guise. She was immediately requisitioned during the war as a hospital ship. It was where she met her fate in 1916, being sunk by a mine in the Mediterranean. So what we're going to do, this game, like Titanic Honor and Glory, I should say, allows us to have a walk around. So I thought what we'd do is split it into at least 2 sections. So we'll start with the ship in its hospital ship guise, I should say. And let's have a walk around what they call the exterior, which really just means the deck, which you couldn't do in Honor and Glory because they hadn't fully modelled it, because it was just a demo. But we get more of the ship to look at in this. So this is in the hospital ship guise, so she's all painted white, and we can see we are on the... Where are we? Towards the rear of the superstructure. Oh, we've got these little info boards. Gantry Davit Motor House. These structures contain the motors and reels for operating the girder arms and lowering the lifeboats. These gigantic Gantry Davits, which, if you've ever seen a picture of the Britannic, you'll immediately notice one of the great changes from the Olympic and the Titanic is the addition of these big stacked lifeboats with these enormous davits, which when the time came apparently worked very well for the Britannic, and they saved a lot of lives, so good on them. And also thermotanks. Hot air to rooms by forcing air through tubes heated by steam created, before sending it through the ventilation ducts. The gantry davits were moved via a piston attached to the worm gear a worm gear, which was connected via more gears to shafts driven by electric motors in the motor houses. Some David trivia for you there. I know you're excited to hear it. So we have a little bit of mobility in this, guys, which you did not in Honour and Glory, the Titanic demo. So it will enable us to do a little bit of parkour around the ship so we can see more of it, which is good. Electric winches, which her sisters didn't have. You can see in the James Cameron film where they recreated the lowering of the lifeboats. It was all done by hand cranks. Got the life-saving gear. Yeah, I'll switch these boards off for now. I think they're very interesting, but there's a point where they do start to get in the way a little bit. This little thing up here is a elevated position for compass readings, away from the heavy plate steel, which could interfere with the compass magnets. Sorry, interfere with the compass reading, not compass magnets. What the fuck am I talking about? And there's another one of them further up on top of the bridge, which was a distinction of Britannic, because Titanic and Olympic did not have the compass position on top of the bridge. You can tell I did a little bit of reading before the stream. I just wanted to know a bit more about the vessel. I only had a passing knowledge of it, really. She was completed in 1914, just at the outbreak of the war, and had a 2-year career. And that is a fucking Lewis gun, which is a sign of wartime service. Not much good for repelling mines, unfortunately. So we're coming up to the bridge. Switch the info boards on again soon. And this was the wing cab that was featured also in the 1997 film where Captain Smith leans out over the side to look at the hull. Hell of a view, really. They did a nice job with recreating all of this. And let's have a wander inside the bridge itself. Switch the info boards on. Engine order telegraph. Maneuvering telegraph. Navigating bridge. While this area was primarily used when near land, it did contain the main telegraphs for sending engine orders and other commands. The helm was connected to the wheelhouse via shafts and gears. The wheelhouse is actually behind us here. There we go. So these things are quite impressive. Orders, docking telegraph, emergency telegraph. I'm guessing that's just a duplicate of these. But this one has slightly different syntax on it. It's all about these specific docking commands, not clear. Slack away starboard. I'm guessing that these don't only go to the engine, but they presumably direct the crew. So these things are just connected by a big series of cables to their outputs in the engine room. And again, I hate to keep referencing the film, but it's pretty good, so I'm going to. You can see how in the event of a change in speed, they would ring it up here, and it would be repeated down in the engine room, and then they would use the steam valve, the big wheel, throttle I suppose you could call it, to set the specific steam pressure for the given speed. Alright, let's have a look in the wheelhouse. Lovely linoleum, just like Titanic. And the internal telephones, again, seen in the film, with I think it's Officer Lightoller comes over when the iceberg is spotted in Titanic and picks up one of these, which is connected to the crow's nest out front, and gets the news of the big fucking iceberg that spelt the end of the ship. Darkness is starting to descend. Polaris, a simplified compass used to find the ship's bearing. Nice. Oh, we're getting some nice warm light now. Bridgewing cab, we know that. By crikey, look at that. The transition is pretty sudden though. I thought the Marconi radio room was somewhere around here. While Britannic's plans indicate this room was for a senior officer, a long tub can be found in the wreck that is not shown on any plans, likely just for hospital service. Huh. See, we just get a cursory view inside the cabins. It's not fully fleshed out and detailed yet. But it's better than nothing. It was intended that an additional set of gantry davits would be installed here, like the one on the starboard side of the ship. But due to the tight schedule of the HMHS conversion, this was omitted. The gantry davits intended for this space can be seen on the shipbuilder's model. Huh. I'm sorry if my reading is a bit hesitant, but I do have some issues with my eyes that make reading quite difficult for me, so I shall try my best, just bear with me. I was going to go up here and have a look. Oh wow, that's gorgeous. So I had a thought when I was talking on the bridge there about the Titanic. It's almost impossible to talk about Britannic without talking about Titanic, because that ship is so famous that her history almost overwhelms the history of this ship, which is pretty rich in and of itself. You know, both had a career that ended in tragedy and disaster. So let's do a bit of parkour here. Yes, we can. Good. I do like the additional freedom that you have on the external model to be able to run and jump around a little bit. And you've got a bit of speed too, which you didn't have in Honour and Glory. You were artificially limited to this very kind of plodding pace, which suited the demo, but it's nice to have the freedom to zoom about a bit more. So let's go have a look at the aft of the ship, the stern. Ooh. This leads to the forward second-class entrance. Can we go in? I don't want to do that just yet. I've got an idea of where I'd like to start in the interior. Look at the lighting. The green lighting was a requirement of hospital ships in World War I, apparently. This is the manoeuvring bridge. The back here, which has a helm and some telegraphs. Amazing, really, the era. It was all mechanical, just cables and pulleys. And this, rather grimly, is a morgue. A late addition to the Britannic in-hospital ship service. This is where the dead got put, right at the back of the ship. You can hear the ensign fluttering away there. Big shout out to the music, actually. The composer did a bang up job. All of the music in this is absolutely stunning, and I just love listening to it. It fits the mood perfectly. There is a sinking simulation, quote unquote, of this, which you can't do from the interior of the ship, but you can take part in from the external deck area, a bit like this. I'm not going to do that in this stream. I've never actually tried it. My son's tried it, says it's quite good fun, in as much as a recreation of a maritime disaster can be fun. But oh, I like that. But I will save it for the next stream. We'll see what happens. Boat deck, we're back up here. That's where we started, I believe. Okay, I'm doing my thing of going around in circles, so without further ado, let's take a look at the interior. In contrast to Honour and Glory, we have the facility to... yes, you can jump over the side. Nothing really happens, but you do end up in the water, and I think you can't get back on. So we do have a menu access system in this game, where we can go out, go to tour the ship, make sure we're still in HMHS configuration, and let's go to the forward grand staircase. So this is going to be a big change from the Titanic demo because most of the fittings were taken out for hospital service, so you get a very austere looking boat. It's kind of sad in a way. There it is. Has that beautiful glass dome. And again, the music hitting exactly the right notes. And the only thing that survived in the fittings was the banisters. Though most of the ship's White Star Line fittings were removed for safekeeping during the war, the oak banisters remained in place. So we've got this very plain wall here which had the organ on the original plans. The organ survives to this day and was restored in 2006, along with a lot of the fittings actually. When we look at the RMS model, which has the paper Britannic as it were, how it was planned to be, you'll see it as it was intended. And I think the guys that made this used a lot of the surviving interiors that are dotted around the world. People have entire rooms that are furnished from the Britannic's White Star fittings. And it's quite something we can't go down here because it's walled off. You are quite restricted inside. But quite the contrast to the Titanic model. Very plain, utilitarian looking. Off limits to wounded soldiers. He didn't want a bunch of squaddies running around fucking shit up. So here we have a little bit of commonality with Sister, the white corridors. Crew only labels. This has remained relatively unchanged. Yeah, these are just the endless white corridors. Although if we go forward we can see out the front of the ship, it's quite cool. There's the mast and the forepeak. Very mournful music. Sounds a bit almost Thomas Newman-ish. Shawshank and American Beauty, the piano and chords playing. Oh, there's the elevators. Wow, it really was very basic. Let's see if there's anything to the rear of the ship. Get a tiny bit of clipping here where we can see through the model, but nothing too disruptive. Some of the splendour of the wooden fittings remains here. Can we get in anyway? Let's have a look. I know there is a cabin around here somewhere. So like Honour and Glory, there's a few areas we can see but we can't get to. That's cool. Beds, lots of hospital beds. Fuse box. Bunks of wounded soldiers were crammed in wherever possible, allowing HMHS Britannic to fit a few thousand wounded. I think she made 5 or 6 voyages in all to and from the Dardanelles Turkish theatre back to England. So she had a fairly active career before getting sunk. Okay, I think that kind of covers it for a lot of this area. elevators again. Let's have a look at one of the suites to the ship. HMHS, we don't want to suddenly turn it into RMS. So the locations have the same names as their RMS forebear. So we'll see Regal Suite. It's not so regal in hospital ship configuration. It basically looks like a cupboard. 18th of November 1916, Naples, Italy. Rank does come with its privileges. This suite, though partially stripped, still retains some of its luxuries. It would have been occupied by officers of the Royal Army Medical Corps. Beep. Melt shit. Here we go. Just simple cots. I'm a vampire. Can hear the sea quietly lapping away outside. Some nice audio. Boxes and boxes and boxes. I mean, I suppose if you had to have the grim task of serving on a hospital ship, this wouldn't be bad at all, really. It's clean and very basic, but yeah, you got your little social area where you can piss it up with your eating buddies. What do we have here? Is that a little calendar widget thingy? Yes, that's the proper name. Fuck off. Right. And out we go. I think this takes us back into the grand staircase area. Yes. We've seen that, so let's have a look around to the ship. Georgian suite, that will do. Of course, we've moved kings, so we went from the Edwardian era that symbolised the Titanic and Olympic to the Georgian era. Oh wow. Let's just have a look around. We don't need the big info plates. Simple portholes with the deadlights. I know people were smaller then, but these beds look very small to me. This is actually nicer than the Regal suite. A bit cosier. GSC, short for Grand Staircase. I was a bit confused there for a moment. And on to the next one, let's see. Swimming bath, here we go. That's pretty cool. Some trivia about the design of the Titanic, or the Britannic, I should say. I keep saying fucking Titanic. Bloody hell. The Britannic had a double hull fitted, and the structure for it extended upwards, pinching the space of the plunge pool a little bit. So the Olympic and Titanic class boats had a walkway on both sides, but they didn't have the room on this one, so it's just on this side. We know from some survivors' diaries that the pool was used by nursing staff quite a lot. Let's have a look. Better get used to that water, folks. Not much else to see. Some change showers. I mean, by the standards of the time, if you were used to the hell of the Gallipoli campaign, it would have been nice to come somewhere like here just to wind down. Decor of Britannic. The pool room was not installed during her fateful crossing. The pool itself was functional. Stewardesses recollect swimming in it shortly before the disaster. Alright, cool. So in the RMS guys configuration, I should say, there's a little bit more to this area. You can go through to this short corridor here. talk about that when we do all that, which we'll do soon. So let's do the free cam on the exterior, and then we'll have a look at the RMS configuration, because it's a very interesting contrast, at least I think it is. Wow, there she is. Outstanding job on the model, really. This is just a bunch of light bulbs, this thing. Pretty cool, though. We can have a bit of Jack and Rose. Oh, the crow's nest. This is an interesting little spot. You can see there's the bell, and there's the little ladder down the steel mast into the accommodation below, where the crew could get into this thing. See, they had quite a view. Obviously, that was the intent of it. Not as high as the bridges you might imagine. This was a military designation that the hospital ships were required by some law. I don't know whether it's maritime law or international law or whatever, but that's why there's that big board with the numbers and the letters. So you can see how these huge davits really broke the ship's superstructure up in comparison to her sisters. She had other differences as well. The other two ships had 2 expansion joints. She had... Oh, there's a lifeboat lowered. That's cool. Wow, look at that. I think in addition to the better survival systems on board the Britannic, one of the things that contributed to the good survival rate was the fact that it was the Mediterranean and they were fairly close to land, so they didn't have such a great risk of hypothermia. Britannic Liverpool, there she is. So we can have a little look for those of you that enjoy submegaphobia. Boom. The business end of the ship's propulsion system. These things are absolutely huge. So we've got 2 wing propellers with 3 blades and a central steam turbine driven propeller of 4 blades. It's pretty cool to be able to go. Can't get below the level of the ship, so just the little keel here. Below the level of the keel I meant, not the ship. The weathering is excellent, and the fact that it's slightly dirty is, well, it would be, I expect, in service. Like the cosmetics of the vessel were much less of a consideration. That distinctive arrowhead breakwater that these ships had, which was to protect the rear of the ship from green water coming over the bow in heavy seas, which, if you've ever seen any video or been on a large ship in fairly heavy weather, is much more common than you might think. Let's get the old waves crashing over the bow. This is the rooftop compass I mentioned earlier. So the purpose of these high platforms was to get the compass away from the steel and the superstructure to the extent that it's possible to gain some accuracy in the readings. Light's starting to go down again. Fast by the look of it. They're lovely pinks and blues. There's the ensign, which my son thought was the Australian flag, which confused him. He's at that age where he's learning about flags in school, so I had to explain it was the ensign, but then I couldn't explain the origin of the style of the ensign, so I ended up looking like a bit of a twat. See if we can find one of these expansion joints. They are down here somewhere. There we go. There's one right there. So these allowed a bit of flex in the hull, because obviously in a huge ship, perhaps not obviously, in a huge ship you get quite a lot of movement as the ship rides on waves, and it just allows that movement to take place without breaking anything, so you get a bit of open and close along these expansion points. And the Titanic famously broke along the rear expansion joint. I think it was around here somewhere, where obviously the structure is by definition a bit weaker. There it is, it's right there. Yeah, between funnels 3 and 4. So the fourth funnel on these ships is cosmetic. It didn't actually do anything at all. It's merely a stylistic choice. Only the first 3 were exhausting the boilers. Likewise, only the first 2 whistles actually were plumbed in and working. The others are fake. So just one of those things, it's all about appearance. See, the cross is illuminated now, and that lovely green coloured lighting, which they really stretch out. I'm going to have a little sip of my beer. Some Southern Tier IPA. So, that is more or less the exterior and interior spaces of the Britannic model done. Let's have a look at the RMS model. Tour the ship. RMS. Let's start on the deck again, just for continuity. RMS exterior. So we have the original RMS paint job, which is the black hull with the yellow cheek line. Gold, I suppose you should say. Reserved for first class. There we go. So look how relatively little clutter there is. Okay, so we're going to go in there soon, but I just wanted to have a look on the roof of this structure here. This was for crew, this little spot. Lift machine house. Now this is something interesting. Yeah, that's the dome cover. This box here is the cover for the staircase thing. You can see it there in its hemispherical shape. Pretty cool, huh? Alright. So this is the paper Britannic, how she should have been and never served. This is quite the contrast, and it looks absolutely glorious. "29th of August 1915, Belfast, Ireland." There we go. Boom. The organ music is from the automatic organ here, which you can see. As I said earlier in the stream, it survives to this day. And there's the little paper, I suppose, I was going to say punch card, but that would be wrong. The thing that allows the automaton to do its thing. And that's the little cherub that is shared with the sisters. And of course the famous clock. We've got some ticking, that's cool. They've upped the ambient sound effects a little bit from the Honour and Glory demo. So the rest of it is fairly similar. These areas weren't really changed when she was converted to a hospital ship, but we can go downstairs too, which we were not able to do in the hospital ship configuration. Again, these very narrow lateral corridors, which I just thought seemed a bit claustrophobic. Transverse, I suppose they should be called, not lateral. Music fading as we walk away from it. It's pretty cool. Right, and there's the bow of the ship. Fire extinguisher. Get the decorations on the elevator casings. I really like the style. It's slightly different from what you see in Titanic Honour and Glory. With the, I think it's all carpeted in there, or all tiled, but this has this, I assume, linoleum floor, and this very fetching turquoise green, with the occasional carpet on it. And this is the, I think this is the postroom or purser's office, it'll tell me. This area took over some of the functions of Olympic and Titanic's pursers, an inquiry office. From here, passengers could send and receive telegrams as well as post letters. No, a little writing area, that's neat. First class staterooms. Can we go much further here? So we've got a bit of the trickery that we saw in Honour and Glory here, where they stop us from going very far with some carefully placed obstacles. Can I get to them? Doorway leads to first class staterooms. There's also a watertight door, as Britannic's watertight bulkheads were heightened. That's interesting, I'd forgotten that. So Titanic's watertight bulkheads extended as high as E-deck, which is the deck below us. Of course, those familiar with the film will know that that contributed in no small way to the sinking. Oh, here we go. I think we're in a stateroom. Contributed to the sinking where, like an ice cube tray, as the ship angle tilted downwards, more and more water flooded over the top of the bulkhead on E-deck. Wow, look at this. How pretty. Quite a contrast from the officers' quarters. And I said it in the Honour and Glory demo, but it's something I really enjoy about simulation, is the ability to effectively put a foot back in time to see things how they would have been. Nice bed with a little, I don't know if that's a cot or a bed. Guessing it's just what they called a single back then. And out we go. And I think that that was the Georgian stateroom. I have to check. The zone system that they use in this game is quite interesting. It's a big contrast to Honor and Glory, where you essentially had free roam, and there was only one load, which was as you stepped on and off the ship from the side of the dock. Lovely old upright piano there. Okay, let's have a look around some other spots. Tour the ship. RMS. See if I don't know if that was the Georgian suite or the Regal suite that we just saw, but we're going to find out because I'm going to go back. And we have, oh no, this is very nice and very different, much bigger. Goodness me. The sitting room was spacious enough to entertain moderate-sized private parties. In-cabin dining and tea service was also offered by the steward staff. This is obviously a staff area. And the broom. Wow. I like the little letterhead. Bits of paper lying around. And a bathroom, which I expect was quite a new thing back in the day on something like a ship. With a proper bath with running hot and cold water. Okay, cool. Yes, we get the idea. So let's go down to the swimming pool. It's slightly different to the hospital ship config. It's worth seeing. There we go. We've got the entrance corridor outside, which we did not have before. We've got this lovely polished stone in the walls. Same annotation about the walkway down the sides. The ship's double bottom was too tall to allow that. Look at it. I actually had the thought when you walk into the room, it resembles a giant train carriage with the sloping roof sides. And there are some windows too. So an interesting thing for me is in Titanic Honor and Glory you can get a glimpse of this room through this doorway from the room behind where the model is standing. And it looks a bit like this. You can see about this much, which means the doorway would have been this thing, but it's not a watertight door in the Titanic demo, which I found rather interesting, whereas that is most definitely a sliding watertight door. And there's the staircase area. We can't go through because there's a small box in the way. So we'll have to exit out the regular way, but yeah, this basically leads up to the grand staircase. Boiler Room 6 is worth a look too. This area was also modelled in Titanic Honor and Glory, but you couldn't see as much of it as we can now. There we go, there's the deck casing up there. So this is where we enter in Titanic Honor and Glory. I'll just turn this off. So this doorway leads, it's kind of hard to read. Scotland Road, that's the big crew passageway that runs almost the entire length of the ship. And that's open in Honor and Glory, and that's how we get in. But alas, it is closed here. So there is an interesting little detail that we can get to in this boiler room, which I think is worth showing. spoilers really are absolutely ginormous. So we can't go down that one. There's a plant pot in the way. We can get down there, I'm pretty sure of it, yes. Can you imagine the heat must have been coming off these things? And the thing of interest down here is this, the so-called Fireman's Passage or Fireman's Pipe. And what this was a tunnel. The front of the ship is this way. It's a tunnel from their accommodation on the, under the forepeak all the way to the spoiler room. So see these spoilers, we're looking at the back of the ship here, they're arranged in a kind of transverse fashion. And your crew, this led to two spiral staircases. The one I think on the left hand side goes up to the deck and the one on the right hand side goes to the crew accommodation. The purpose of it being these guys would be absolutely filthy and it allowed them to go about their business without disturbing anybody. I just realised people probably want to see what's written on the walls. It's just a curious little signs. Men will break step while in tunnel. I think that is just a noise thing, to not make too much noise, to freak out people who are either side of the forepeak areas. See, it was quite an athletic effort to get in and out of these areas when the shit hit the fan, and when it did in the Titanic's case, this is one of the first areas affected, one of the earliest areas that reported water coming in. And of course people had to get the hell out of Dodge quickly. Okay, and that would take us up to E-Deck, so I'm going to use the menu to get through because we can't actually get out of here without doing that. So I think, yeah, that's pretty much all to see. Let's do the free cam of the exterior and have a look around. It's a very handsome paint job they've given to the ship. Well worth looking at, I think. May 1919. The ship was sunk by this point, so it's kind of, this is a bit of a dream here. Look at it, isn't it glorious? And you can see the classic White Star Line colours here with the dark hull and that gold cheek line that runs all the way, the full length of the ship. We can do a little fly through, end of Titanic style, of the promenade deck. Oops, if I can get my act together. Whee! Jack Rose! So you can look into these windows, there's not much to see. They did a neat trick with the lighting, which when it gets darker I will illustrate, where the lighting has a sense of depth to it, so it looks as if you can see. No morgue on the ship, obviously. Big old stack of boats. Deck chairs on the Britannic. So as I was saying, in terms of casualties, around, I think, 30 people died when the Britannic sunk. And a large number of those were caused by the captain, once he realised the ship was in jeopardy, attempted to head at top speed for shallow water with the intent of beaching the ship. And unfortunately, by that time, the ship's angle had reached such that the propellers were raised out of the water, and the turning propellers smashed and destroyed one of the occupied lifeboats, leading to a very high death toll, which I also imagine was absolutely horrific to witness as well. A little bit of a grim note for you there. See, the lighting is terrific. So I really like this game. It was pretty inexpensive on Steam. I think I paid $15 for it. Well worth it. If you like the subject matter, nothing to lose. But it also gives me great hope for future of the Titanic Honour and Glory project, which has been controversial to say the least, because it's been in development hell for some time now. Demo 3 is approaching 4 years old, and while that in itself is a gift and a fantastic slice of history, allowing you to walk around a pretty substantial part of RMS Titanic, it falls way short of what we were hoping for, which was, at the very least, a full museum ship. I don't think many people are too bothered about the quote-unquote game element, because I don't think the team really believe they could pull that off anyway. Time will tell, I guess. I'm sure there's lots of things that I've missed, but I've not had the game long, and this is just my little playthrough, just to give the tiny number of viewers that I have an idea of what it was like. And that's the Britannic. Sunk in 1916. The wreck was discovered in the 70s by Jacques Cousteau himself, and it's actually in very good condition. If you look up sonar pictures of it, these huge girder davits are easily visible on the sonar pictures, so they all survived, and it's very well preserved. Divers have done penetration dives where they actually enter the wreck and have had a good look around. I think the main purpose of them was to establish whether the watertight doors were closed, which I believe they were. So there's an anchor here, and this anchor was one of 3 on the ship. Obviously there's some here too, one on this side and one on the other side. And in order to use this, they had to use this crane to take it out of that well and then deploy it. It was apparently a very difficult operation according to the game's own trivia, and they didn't do it very often because of that. Here we go, the light's going down. And that's a picture, I think. So I'm going to wait a little bit longer just till the light dips a bit more so we can see the lighting at night, because it's quite cool. This system of wires here was the telegraph aerial with the Morse telegraph, the Marconi system. Strung pretty much the entire length of the ship from the front mast to the rear mast. God damn, my back is killing me. I always have this problem in streaming. I'm not used to sitting still for so long, because I have to watch my position relative to the microphone. Here we go. So the lighting is really well done on the ship, and in some cases when you look at a distance it gives the impression of depth, and in some cases there's actually something there, like there's a simple room texture here, but in others it's very well done. It looks like there's something there when there actually isn't, which I think is artistically fantastic. The team have teased some Titanic shots where they've completed more of the ship, where they do the same thing but there is actually detail inside. So I just wanted to wait till we got that lighting effect, and let's do a nice pan out on the ship and see what we've got. RMS Britannic, people. As she never actually was, but I think it's a nice little tribute that the game designers did to let us pretend for a brief moment. Alright, and I think that's a good point to end the stream, so if you're watching, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Bye bye.